back into 6 defensive backs. 4th and 8. Pocket trembling. Knocked away. Khalil Mack.
On this 2-point conversion attempt. Carr throws, deflected, broken up.
The Raiders came into this season with high expectations. They traded for Davante Adams and hired Josh McDaniels to be their next head coach. Las Vegas was supposed to be good, but they just aren't. The Raiders are now 0-3 in perhaps the most painful way. A close loss to a division rival, a 20-point blown lead, and a last-second failed comeback attempt. They were so close all 3 times, but they're winless. Week 3 was pretty bad for the Raiders. The Titans, who were also 0-2 coming into the game, were up 24-10 at the half, and Las Vegas was so damn close to pulling it off. The Raiders outscored the Titans 12-0 in the second half, but it just wasn't enough. Mac Hollins caught a touchdown with about 1 minute left to put the Raiders down 2, but the 2-point conversion to Darren Waller was incomplete, leaving the Raiders 0-3 in a huge depressing hole, despite coming into the year with such high expectations. Look, the Raiders went out and made a very bold move in the offseason, going out and trading for Davante Adams. Las Vegas had given up a lot to get him, a first and a second. Plus, the Raiders gave him a 5-year, $141.25 million deal that made him the highest paid wide receiver in the league. There's been rumblings of Davante wanting to join Derek Carr, his old teammate at Fresno State, for years now. Finally, it happened, and really, it was the Hail Mary by the Raiders to become a legit contender. Now, that hasn't happened at all. Davante had a great first week with over 100 yards, but it just hasn't been good enough. Not even close, actually. Against the Cardinals, Davante only had 2 receptions for 12 yards. Then, against Tennessee, he had 5 for 36. He has had a touchdown in every game, but you'd expect crazy numbers from Davante Adams. That's why you pay him all that money, and it's just not turning out well. But it's been an all-offense issue, really. Darren Waller is also getting paid a ton of money to perform, but he just hasn't so far. He had just 3 catches for 21 yards against the Titans, and in the 2 weeks prior, he combined for 130 yards and a single touchdown. That's just not good enough. Mac Hollins alone just put up the best wide receiver performance for a Raider wideout this week with over 150 yards, and he found the end zone. Not to mention, he just straight up outperformed Davante in week 2 as well. It just hasn't been good enough from everyone in Vegas. The other really big acquisition, players-wise at least, was Chandler Jones. Vegas gave him a big 3-year, $51 million deal. So far in 3 games, he has 5 tackles and not a single sack. Not what you could really hope for. Max Crosby, I think, has still been pretty good though. He got a huge 4-year, $98.98 million extension in the offseason, and he has 2 sacks in 3 games already. It's not like anyone's been playing bad necessarily. Like, Davante Adams and Chandler Jones haven't been bad, but they just haven't been good enough either. When you're getting paid that kind of money and are a true star in the league, you're expected to perform at a high level all the time. And we haven't seen enough of it from Davante and Jones. One of the things I think maybe hasn't been talked about enough is just Josh McDaniels in general. The Raiders hired McDaniels with the hopes that he'd be able to turn around Las Vegas, and clearly it hasn't gone well early. He was given another chance as a head coach, and I almost guarantee you that if it doesn't turn around with the Raiders, he's never going to get another shot. McDaniels had his chance with the Broncos back in 2009, and it went awful. He went 8-8 his first year, and then after Denver fell to 3-9 in 2010, he was just straight up axed. That means that following a week 3 loss, McDaniels is now 11-20 in his head coaching career. I get it. McDaniels was great in New England and got to learn from Bill Belichick for a long time, and he has seen what it means to be an NFL head coach. But if he isn't the guy, he isn't the guy. I know it's tough to be hard on a young head coach after only 3 weeks, but this is different. This isn't Mike McDaniel testing out the ropes for the first time. This is a guy who has had the responsibilities before and failed, and everyone hoped that maybe this time it would be different. There was a ton of optimism coming into week 1 from Las Vegas, despite having to go on the road and play a really good Chargers team with Justin Herbert behind center. The Chargers just ran away with it in the second quarter, scoring 2 touchdowns to take a big lead into the half. Las Vegas tried to power back, and they had 17 points in the second half, but it just wasn't enough, and the Chargers barely held on. Nobody was going to act like the world was falling apart for the Raiders after just a week 1 loss to LA. The Chargers were supposed to be insane this year, have one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and just a stout defense with Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack. If anything, the Raiders competing with the Chargers showed that they maybe could be good, but since everything has completely fallen apart. I think one of the worst parts of the Raiders season so far is that there has been promise. Like that week 2 game was so brutal. The Raiders looked so good to start the game, and Las Vegas was quite literally up 20-0 at the half. 20-0. How do you still lose that? The Cardinals, who looked like shit for the first 6 quarters of the year, all of a sudden, Arizona looked great. They outscored the Raiders 23-3 in the second half, 16-0 in the fourth quarter, and then won in the most bizarre way. So Hunter Renfrow had already fumbled on the drive in overtime, and then he did again. Byron Murphy scooped it and took it 59 yards for the game winner. That hurts so much. Like, that week 1 performance wasn't bad, and there were still so many reasons to be optimistic about the Raiders. But when you lose a game like that, that's just a hard one to come back from, and maybe that was weighing on them in week 3. At the end of the day, Sunday was a game between 2 absolutely desperate teams that had lost games that they really shouldn't have and needed a win. The difference between 1-2 and 0-3 to start the year is massive, and Tennessee did just enough to stay alive. 0-3 is a really bad start, but maybe it's manageable. I don't really know. It's definitely not going to be easy, and I don't have a ton of confidence that the Raiders are going to be able to beat the Broncos or the Chiefs in the next 2 weeks. There is a serious possibility that the Raiders are even 0-5 to start the year. It'll get easier down the road for sure, but you can't start that bad and make the playoffs. The thought was that the Raiders and really every other team in the AFC West would just mow through the rest of the league, but the division would still be a dogfight. Maybe we gave the division too much credit. I mean, we saw Russell Wilson and the Broncos literally lose in week 1 to the Seahawks, and the Chiefs just lost to the Colts. Let's just think about that for a second. The Colts lost in week 2, 24-0 to the Jaguars, the worst team in football for the last 2 seasons. On Sunday, the Colts beat Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. How? I don't really know. But this is the NFL, baby. We really don't know what the hell is going to happen. If the Colts can upset the Chiefs, surely the Raiders can beat them. I think at least. I do still have faith in the Raiders to figure things out and be a solid team. There is so much talent on that roster, and it didn't help that Hunter Renfrow was out with a concussion in week 2 either. I do think it's possible that we put too high of expectations on Las Vegas. Josh McDaniels isn't a rookie head coach, but he is still a first-year head coach in Vegas. There's still plenty to figure out, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Raiders have another 10-7 type season and maybe just miss out on the playoffs. This is a talented football team, but it's been ugly, and something needs to change in Las Vegas.